think the ultimate goal is, right, to reach Mars, colonize it, people can live there. So what they started was to look for larger open spaces where they could start to build testing facilities. Boca Chica Beach here in Brownsville, Texas, was one of those places that they looked at, and they were given, I believe, tax abatements by Cameron County. And the original plan was that they were going to do bait and release testing, I believe. It was supposed to just be a testing site. However, once it was built, that changed pretty quickly. It very quickly turned into a testing site for rockets, which a lot of people got really excited about, but it was already really disappointing that the facility was built where it's built to begin with. SpaceX is right behind Boca Chica Beach, which is at the end of Highway 4 out of Brownsville, Texas, and is less than 10 miles away from the proposed LNG sites for Rio Grande LNG and Texas LNG, the Rio Bravo pipeline, the proposed Jupiter oil refinery, and the Port of Brownsville. So quite a lot of industry going on in the area, and there's a lot of concern about the cumulative effects of SpaceX, just because they do have a history of things exploding when they launch rockets. And now their current expansion plan is to launch the biggest rocket in human history. And we're just concerned that if that rocket blows up, it's going to be a lot more than debris raining down on people's front lawns, debris scattered across the beach, people's windows shaking, loud noises. It's going to have, and this is in their own words, it could cause a sonic boom. It could boil an ocelot alive. It could cause quite a lot of issues. And then to top it all off, they have absolutely no discussions with Mexico, which lies right on the other side of the border. And actually, at Boca Chica Beach, you are right next to Playa Bagdad, which is Matamoros, Mexico's beach. Literally, you can see it right across. And in fact, when looking at pictures of SpaceX from above, it looks even closer to their beach, honestly, than it is to ours from the side. There's been no discussions with them, no discussions with locals, really. A lot of people have already been displaced because of this, specifically Boca Chica Village, which was a neighborhood that existed right behind where SpaceX currently is. That had a lot of retirees and people who moved to get away from everything and to have this beautiful view of the beach. And now there's huge buildings and all kinds of industry and bright lights and, you know, all of these machines and noise that go all night long. And the residents were rightfully concerned when SpaceX was proposed and even went to FAA hearings to, you know, voice those concerns. They weren't taken seriously. And a lot of those people ended up getting bought out by SpaceX for large amounts of money. People who tried to stay, a lot of them just eventually gave in because it was just not worth it to keep living there because it had gotten so uncomfortable. The few residents that are left are now dealing with excessive road closures, having to show their licenses so that they can get into their own house because they don't want to let them past the barricades. They have to deal with all of this noise, a lot of pollution. Older residents also have concerns about emergency vehicles with all of the road closures as well, because apparently it's like it takes longer for them to have to move everything out of the way and let emergency vehicles in, and acting like, you know, they own that entire area. And to top it all off, all of that area should not be owned by anyone. It is, you know, the land of the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe of Texas. This is occupied semi-sec, and specifically where the river meets the sea, Boca Chica Beach, is an incredibly sacred spot for them. And that entire area, even where the LNG sites are proposed, is, you know, historical sacred land where there should, you know, artifacts can be found. And they've had an oral history of this for, you know, centuries now. And none of that is ever taken into consideration either. They've not been consulted on any of this industry at all. And it's incredibly disappointing. There's just so many reasons why this is not going to go well. So we've definitely seen this happen before, and you can call it whatever you want, progress. They're neocolonizers. This is colonization, especially with the effects of gentrification that we've also seen in our city, which has been really, really difficult considering the fact that we're one of the most low-income areas in the United States. So people who already couldn't afford to live in the very affordable Brownsville are now dealing with an unaffordable Brownsville, and the cost to survive is getting high. In last fall, there was a public hearing for public comments and written comments as well, with the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, because SpaceX was applying for a flight license, I believe, so that they could move forward with the Starship Super Heavy expansion project, which included plans to fly the Super Heavy rocket, which is the biggest rocket, or will be the biggest rocket ever flown in human history. I think it's supposed to be like a commercial craft to carry like quite a few people in, and it's supposed to be reusable eventually so that they can go back and forth to Mars, which sounds great. But like I mentioned before, every other rocket pretty much that they've launched has exploded either in air or on the ground. They're right next to a wildlife reserve, very close to the Bahia Grande, which is, I believe, North America's biggest wetlands restoration project, Boca Chica Beach itself, and the ocean. And so any claims that there's going to be no effects on any of this seems dubious when you're launching smaller rockets. But with the biggest rocket launch in history, there's just no way. Along with this, there was the addition of 2 extra checkpoints to Boca Chica Beach, which along Highway 4, there's already 1 Border Patrol checkpoint, which is already so alienating. But adding 2 additional ones to make sure that you're a SpaceX employee is ridiculous. It's a public beach. That's the only way to get there. It also included the building of a desalination plant, which we have learned are really, really big and imposing and can cause a lot of pollution as well. So that's great. The permanent destruction of different floodplains, acres of floodplains, which is stressful because Brownsville already has such a poor infrastructure, like really, really bad infrastructure. When it rains here, it pours and people get so flooded. It's so bad. So that'll just add more fuel to that fire, so to speak. And just quite a lot more industry that needed to be built, large like frames for the rocket. It was going to be much more, many more hours of road closures, many more hours with like lights on at all times too.
And is there a new power plant? I mean, are they creating? I mean, remember reading something. They're getting their own
Yes,
gas.
I believe they also wanted to build their own power plant too. That's right. It was a crazy document. It really was, with so many additions, and it's a huge expansion project. And we're already dealing with the negative effects of the current facility that's there.
Yeah.
That's been really difficult. I think an expansion project could be potentially really, really devastating for this entire area in more ways than one. The reporting around this project has been really disappointing, but unsurprising. There was just no way with a person of this caliber that, everything would be negative about it. But I think we really were not prepared for the way that the media gets caught up in the glamour of it all. And I think it also just has something to say about like our society as a whole, because I feel like a lot of us don't recognize that every product that we buy, anything that happens in this country, people are affected, especially when it comes to big industry and things like that. When you're building large, sites and power plants or launching rockets, even Those rockets are always being launched from somewhere, you know? And I think people fail to remember that. And Elon Musk himself has played a part in that. He's been caught on camera before saying that they are using that area because nobody's around there, so they can just blow stuff up. I think all of us, like less than 10 miles away, would beg to differ, but I guess he didn't take that into consideration. And a lot of times we don't even take that into consideration with other things. So I think it's just a point that we need the media as a whole to take this more seriously, to make sure the directly impacted people are always being listened to. And to remember that, like, space exploration as a whole, if it's going to cause this much destruction, then we're not ready for it. And a lot of people like to use Cape Canaveral as like a reason to justify all of this. But I think a lot of the residents of Cape Canaveral would agree with us, quite frankly, because you don't understand what this is like until you're living in it. And I think a lot of people haven't realized what negative impacts this has on our community. They just don't even, it doesn't even cross their mind.